So what is SASH and Three Cheers and where does it come from? So back when I was younger in my earlier career, I used to be a promoter putting on nights every week, sometimes multiple nights and quite a few one-off events as well. And a lot of the times the people coming to those were the same people each time, a lot of the base crowd. And as such, I developed care for the regular guests that we had, a lot of whom were friends. Even though responsible service of alcohol is good, it's not great, and most people fall through the cracks. It only takes care of the very worst case scenarios or the very worst cases. So at the time I wondered if it was possible to intervene on guests to help them not reach intox, but in a way that didn't annoy them and didn't annoy the venue as well by losing them money. But I couldn't figure out a way how to do that. Then in December 2009, I began working on a project at the Coogee Bay Hotel, where the idea was to try to minimize the number of asked to leaves they were having for intoxication, as it was believed that this would increase the revenue that the venue made. So I was basically the first person on the ground there to do that. And what we first of all began doing was just to see patrons who look like they're at risk of intoxication and intervening, recommending they have a water, otherwise it looked like it might be time for them to leave soon. Now the problem with that was that it was way late in their experience, and quite often they would come back, aggressively, possibly telling me off or even threatening me at times. So I decided to change tact and refine our tactics to be more proactive, push water out into the crowd earlier and just offer it out, keep people hydrated as they went. Now this is something where sometimes people think about that and think that they wouldn't like to be given a water or offered a water when they're out drinking, and that's fine. About 50% of the crowd really appreciates it and likes it and says yes to it. And the rest, they don't have to have it if they don't want to. It's just an offering. But what that does is when there is someone who is looking like they're in need of intervention, then it means when we intervene and speak to them, they're not embarrassed about taking a water from us because there's already all these people around them that are already drinking water or having water as part of their experience. So what became clear at the time is it was really having this great impact on patrons and they were really appreciating it. So one thing that was happening was patrons coming back to me the next time they're at the venue and saying, oh, thanks so much for the water the other night. I really woke up feeling fresh and great. And, hangover free, basically, which was a real light bulb moment for me because, hang on, suddenly we're able to intervene in a way that patrons appreciate and help them not reach intox. And at the same time, what was also happening was that the venue started to make increased revenue. So water turned out to be this really incredible thing. And I looked into it, found this article that was written by Dr. Carl from the ABC, and it was talking about how much alcohol dehydrates the body, which is a staggering 120 mils per standard drink. So that really adds up. And when I looked into it further, the effects of dehydration, things that we don't want to see in venues, what it can cause is decreased cognitive ability, so people can't think as straight, increased irritability, so people get upset by things more easily, and also the formation of a negative outlook. So really, if we do our best to keep patrons hydrated, these things don't show up. Now, another really important part of the program or the process is the way in which we do this. So we have this saying in the training that like reflects like, and what that means is what we give patrons is what we get back from them. So if we're friendly, they're friendly. If we're relaxed, then they're relaxed. If we smile, then they smile back. And so it's just as easy to make people upset and frown as it is to make people feel happy and to smile. So we're always going for that latter. We want people to be in a positive mood and be having a great time. So the key aspects of SASH and why it's called Three Cheers Drinking is to really try and keep patrons hydrated as they go. So it's a bit like playing sport, keep them hydrated as they go. So it's called Three Cheers Drinking because we want people to have some water at least every third drink. And it doesn't mean they have to substitute water for a drink. It just means they have to get it into them. So it doesn't matter if they scull the water down. It's just as long as they're getting it into them. So what SASH does is it combines psychology with physiology. And it's far more effective than traditional RSA. Now, when I began working at the Coogee Bay Hotel, it was the second most violent venue in the state. And that was a bit of a worry going in there. But what we found by doing this program is that not only did we reduce the number of asked to leave dramatically and increase revenue, but the number of violent incidents just began to fall away. So this success was then replicated at a place called the Tea Gardens Hotel, which is in Bondi Junction, which is an Irish pub. And they were having a lot of trouble with violence and so forth. And they're actually in court at the time, the Land and Environment Court, who were trying to reduce their trading hours. We went in and straight away the violent incidents stopped. We increased their revenue and saved their license hours. So that was a big outcome. At this stage, we were putting our own trained staff into venues. So this is when we decided to transition to a training business. The training that we'd developed for our staff as we brought them on board, we then thought, well, why don't we just share that with the venues themselves? That way, their staff can do it when we're not there, as there were problems that happened in some of the venues on nights we weren't there. And it's just better for them to run it themselves and for it to be more ingrained in their culture. Around about this time, Brown-Forman reached out to us to sponsor us to conduct the training in the King's Cross Liquor Accord, but also subsidize the training at Solotel, the Solotel group. The problem with becoming a training organization was that once we'd trained venues, they weren't necessarily putting the program in place. It has to be put in place properly in order for it to work. So this is when I decided it'd be a good idea to try and do a trial of the program that was overseen by academics. And the academic who was recommended to me as being the top academic in Australia in this area was Professor Peter Miller, who was one of the advocates for the lockout laws. So one of the reasons why I began this program was to try to prevent the lockout laws and then to try and replace the lockout laws. So I thought if I get this professor on board, if he sees that it's a good thing, then he can put his voice behind it and maybe government would take it up. So I approached Professor Miller and asked him if we could conduct a trial. And he said he would, but if the program was bad, that he wouldn't hold back any punches from it. And I asked him to please do that. I wanted full scrutiny of the program because I believed in it so wholeheartedly. I knew that it would work. So we got a venue on board, which was the Oxford Art Factory. They're a very important venue in Sydney. And the trial got underway and the results were fantastic. Complete cessation in violent incidents, increase in revenue, increase in satisfaction for staff in their roles, increase in customer satisfaction, the whole bit. So for venues who don't put this in place, understand that you're losing money by not doing it. That's the simple truth of the matter. So why not give it a go? Now, as a promoter, someone who used to put on events in Sydney, there's no way I'd be pushing venues to do something like this if it didn't make them money.